There are men who carry rifles into battle. And then there are those who carry hope. In the chaos of war, amidst the deafening thunder of gunfire and explosions, one man stood unarmed, not to take lives, but to save them. This is his story. The desert was burning under the Afghan sun. Dust swirled through the air like ghosts of the fallen, and somewhere between life and death ran Corporal Daniel Hayes, a combat medic of the U.S. Army's 173rd Airborne Brigade. He wasn't holding a rifle. He wasn't looking for the enemy. He was looking for his brothers, the wounded, the broken, the ones calling out for help amidst the storm of bullets. In his pack there were no grenades, only bandages, morphine, and faith. And on that day, the day everything changed, he would need every ounce of it. Daniel Hayes wasn't born a hero. He was born in a quiet town in Kansas, a place where the loudest sound was the whistle of a passing train. His mother was a nurse, his father a Vietnam veteran who never quite spoke of what he saw. As a kid, Daniel grew up hearing his mother say, "You don't need a weapon to be brave, Danny. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is heal." Those words stayed with him. When the towers fell in 2001, he was just 16. By the time he turned 21, he was in Afghanistan, wearing a medic's cross on his arm instead of a gun on his shoulder. They called him Doc. Every unit has one, the man everyone runs to when the world collapses. But no one knew then that this medic, unarmed and outnumbered, would one day alter the fate of an entire mission and the men who lived to tell it. It was August 2009, Kunar province near the Pakistani border, a remote valley known to locals as the Devil's Spine. Tall cliffs on both sides, villages carved into the rock, the kind of place where every shadow could hide a rifle. Doc Hayes was assigned to Bravo Company, 2nd Battalion, 40 men, on a routine patrol that was anything but routine. Their mission? Deliver medical supplies and secure a small village that had been raided by insurgents a week earlier. Intel said it was quiet, but in Afghanistan, quiet was the word soldiers feared the most. At 14:30 hours, as Bravo Company crossed a dry riverbed, the mountain erupted. Machine gun fire cracked from both ridges. RPGs streaked through the air, exploding in the sand. The first Humvee was hit. Flames engulfed it instantly. The radio exploded with chaos. Hayes hit the ground, heart pounding. He could feel the air pressure of bullets snapping inches above his head. He looked around. His brothers were pinned. Sergeant Miller was bleeding out behind a boulder. 2 others lay in the open, screaming for help. He had no weapon, no cover, no choice. "I'm going," he shouted into the radio. "Doc, stay down," his squad leader barked, but he was already moving. Hayes sprinted across the open riverbed, 30 yards of pure hell. Bullets tore into the dirt around him. Shrapnel sliced his arm, but he didn't stop. He slid beside Sergeant Miller, ripped open his pack, and pressed gauze to the wound. "Stay with me, Sarge. You're not going home in a body bag today." His hands moved faster than his fear. He wrapped, tied, injected, ignoring the blood soaking through his uniform. When the bleeding slowed, he crawled to the next man, then the next. Each time, a bullet missed him by inches. Each time, he chose to move anyway. From the ridge, the Taliban watched in disbelief. One of their snipers later told U.S. intelligence, "We thought he was mad. No weapon, only hands, yet he kept coming." By sunset, Bravo Company was surrounded. Their comms were jammed and their ammunition was running low. Hayes was the only medic left uninjured. He had 12 wounded, 1 dead, and no evacuation route. As darkness fell, the unit's captain made the hardest call.
"Doc, we can't hold this valley. We're pulling back." But Hayes looked at the men still bleeding behind the rocks. "If we move now, they die. I'm not leaving them." The captain hesitated, then nodded. "You've got 10 minutes, Doc. Then we go." 10 minutes. That was all he had. In that time, Hayes crawled back through the kill zone, dragging the wounded, patching arteries, whispering prayers. His voice never shook. His hands never stopped. And when the last man was stable, he radioed, "All accounted for, sir. Let's get them home." But home was still miles away. Under the cover of darkness, the unit began their retreat, wounded on stretchers, weapons low, and hearts pounding. The mountains were alive with the whispers of enemy movement. Hayes walked at the rear, his body aching, his canteen empty. Every few steps, he'd check a pulse, tighten a bandage, or whisper to a soldier slipping into shock. "You're going to see your kids again, buddy. Just keep breathing." He said it so many times that he almost believed it himself. But as they reached the edge of the valley, an explosion lit up the night. An IED buried in the dirt path. The blast threw Hayes backward. When he opened his eyes, he saw his captain down, leg torn open, unconscious. Smoke. Screams. Fire. He didn't think. He ran. Dragging his co-op from the flames, he tore off his own belt, tied a tourniquet, and started chest compressions. "Come on, sir. Stay with me. Don't you quit on me now." No pulse. He kept going anyway. Then a faint heartbeat. He smiled through the dust and tears. "There you go. That's it. You're still in this fight." By dawn, the unit had reached a narrow pass, their only way out, but the enemy had beaten them there. More gunfire, more chaos. Pinned again, this time with no air support. Then Hayes heard something through the static of his radio, a faint distress call from another squad, Charlie team, just 2 kilometers away. They were under heavy fire too. Same valley, different ridge. If they fell, the Taliban would have a direct route to the nearby FOB, forward basing operation. Saving them could mean saving the entire region. But it also meant leaving his wounded behind. He looked around. 12 men depending on him. And somewhere out there, 30 more fighting for their lives. He made his choice. "I'm going for Charlie team." "Doc, you can't." "I need a medic. You hold this position, I'll bring them back." He left his pack behind, only taking morphine, a flashlight, and his mother's photo from his chest pocket. Then, under the rising Afghan sun, the unarmed medic ran into another firefight. The valley was silent at first. Then, like thunder, it came alive. Rockets screamed overhead. Dust filled his lungs. He found Charlie team in pieces. Men crawling, bleeding, firing blindly. Their medic was already gone. "I'm Doc Hayes, Bravo Company. I'm here to get you out." One soldier looked up, blood running down his face. "Where's your weapon, Doc?" "Don't need one. I'm not here to kill anybody." He moved from man to man, stopping bleeding, fixing airways, carrying whoever could still breathe. At one point, an enemy fighter appeared over a ridge, rifle aimed right at him. Hayes froze. Then, the man lowered his weapon. Maybe it was mercy, maybe confusion. But in that moment, for one heartbeat, even the enemy saw what he was, a man trying to save life in a place built for death. With the wounded stabilized, Hayes led the survivors towards Bravo's position. But they were outnumbered, surrounded again, and out of time. He radioed. "This is Doc Hayes. I've got 15 wounded, 2 KIA. Request immediate air evac. Coordinates." God help us all. Minutes later, the roar of Apache helicopters broke the dawn. The airstrike pushed the enemy back just enough for extraction. Hayes directed every chopper, loading men before himself, always last. When it was finally his turn, he looked back at the valley. Smoke rising, sunlight breaking, and for the first time, he allowed himself to cry. At the field hospital, doctors counted 37 men alive because of him. 37, from 2 different squads. He had no weapon, no armor left, but his hands had changed the course of that battle and the mission. Later, when his commander asked him why he did it, he simply said, "Sir, I took an oath to save lives, not just American ones. Lives." They called him a hero, but the truth is, he was terrified every second. He just learned that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you move anyway. He never forgot the faces of those he saved, or those he couldn't. At night, he'd sometimes wake up to the sound of that same riverbed, gunfire echoing in his mind. But he found peace in knowing that his fight had meaning. In the story of war, most heroes are remembered for the enemies they defeated. But sometimes, the greatest hero is the one who refused to fight. Daniel "Doc" Hayes didn't change the world by taking lives. He changed it by saving them. He proved that compassion could be just as powerful as courage. And in a place where humanity seemed to die, he kept it alive. He was more than a soldier. He was a reminder that true courage has no weapon.
War ends. But for the ones who lived it, it never really goes away. For Corporal Daniel "Doc" Hayes, the battle was over. But the war inside him was just beginning. The sun rose over the plains of Kansas, golden and peaceful, a world away from the red mountains of Afghanistan. Hayes sat on his porch, coffee in hand, watching the wind move through the fields. To anyone passing by, he looked like an ordinary man, a quiet veteran, a small-town hero. But behind those calm eyes, there was still fire. Every morning, he woke up before dawn, not because he wanted to, but because he still heard the gunfire in his dreams. The screams, the dust, the smell of burning metal. War had followed him home. He'd walk down Main Street, past the old diner, the church, the town square. People would smile and say, "Morning, Doc." And he'd smile back, a practiced smile, the kind you wear to keep the world from asking questions. Hayes took a job at the local VA hospital. He worked quietly, fixing wounds that didn't bleed, sitting with soldiers who had seen too much, just like him. Sometimes he'd just listen, because he knew that sometimes silence was the best medicine. One young Marine once told him, "Sir, I can't forget what I saw out there." Hayes nodded, eyes heavy. "You don't forget, son. You just learn to live with it and make it mean something." He became a mentor for other medics, teaching them not just how to treat wounds, but how to stay human. He'd say, "You'll see pain that'll break your heart, but don't let it harden you. Your job isn't just to save lives, it's to remind the world that every life matters." In 2015, 6 years after that fateful day in Unarmed province, Hayes received a letter. No return address, just a single name written in shaky handwriting. He opened it, and a small photograph fell out. A boy, maybe 12 years old, smiling beside an American soldier. "Dear Mr. Hayes, my name is Amir. You saved my father during the fighting near our village. He was wounded and you helped him, even though he was not American. He told me your name before he died. Because of you, I am alive. I want to thank you." Hayes froze. He remembered that day. The chaos, the blood, the Afghan villager hit by shrapnel when the Taliban attacked their convoy. He had treated him even while under fire. His captain had told him to leave the man, but he hadn't. Now, years later, that single act of mercy had found its way back to him through a child's handwriting and a faded photograph. He read the letter again and again, and for the first time in years,
he cried. But not all memories brought peace. There were still faces he couldn't forget, men he couldn't save. At night he'd hear their voices. "Doc, help me." He'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding like he was still in the valley. His therapist called it PTSD. He called it debt. Every life he saved felt like a gift, but every life he lost felt like a wound that never closed. Sometimes he'd walk into the VA ward at night, sit beside sleeping patients and whisper to himself, "One more life, Doc. Just save one more." He couldn't explain it. Maybe it was guilt, maybe duty, or maybe it was both. In 2018, an NGO reached out, Doctors Beyond Borders, a humanitarian group working in war-torn areas. They had heard about Hayes, the unarmed medic who saved dozens without firing a shot. They asked him to join a peace mission in Syria, where refugees were flooding across the border, wounded and sick. At first he refused. He told them he was done with war. But one night, he looked again at Amir's photo, that boy smiling in the middle of chaos, and he realized something. If war keeps finding me, maybe I'm supposed to keep fighting it, just in a different way. So he said yes. Syria, different country, same smell, smoke, fear, death. Hayes landed at a makeshift camp near Aleppo, rows of tents, crying children, and distant echoes of artillery. He wasn't wearing a uniform anymore, just a medic's vest, a stethoscope, and the same crosspatch on his arm. Within hours, he was back in rhythm, stitching wounds, giving transfusions, comforting mothers who had lost everything. One local doctor told him, "You have no weapon, no guards. You're not afraid?" Hayes smiled faintly. "I've already been through hell. This is the way back out." Days turned into weeks. The camp became his battlefield. But this time his enemy wasn't the Taliban or insurgents. It was time, infection, and hopelessness. And still he fought. Then one night, everything changed again. A convoy of trucks approached the camp, carrying food and medicine. But before they could unload, the horizon lit up. Mortar fire! Shells raining down, the ground shook and screams filled the air. The camp was under attack. Hayes grabbed his kit, running into the chaos. No weapon, no armor, just instinct. A shell exploded near the children's tent, smoke and fire everywhere. He crawled through it, coughing, searching. Pulled 3 kids from the flames, went back for more. "This way! Keep your heads down!" he shouted, guiding refugees to safety. A shard of metal tore through his shoulder, but he kept moving. His hands were shaking, his uniform soaked in blood, some his, some not. And as the attack continued, he refused to leave. "If I walk away now, they all die," he told the other volunteers. "We stay. We hold this line." They turned a supply tent into an emergency ward, Hayes leading, treating dozens through the night. Hours passed like seconds, pain blurred with purpose. When the shelling finally stopped, dawn broke over a camp that should have been a graveyard, but wasn't. 112 people had survived, because one man, unarmed, bleeding, unrelenting, refused to give up. Days later, international news broke the story. American medic saves over 100 refugees in Syrian attack. They called him a hero again. The UN offered to honor him. The US Embassy reached out. But Hayes turned it all down. You don't do it for medals. You do it because if you don't, nobody will. Instead, he stayed. For another 6 months, he worked the border camps, training local medics, rebuilding what was lost. To them, he wasn't a soldier or an American. He was just Doc, a man who showed up when everyone else had given up.
In early 2019, Hayes finally returned home. His body was weaker now, scars on his chest, shoulder, and hands. But his eyes, they were calmer. He visited the graves of his fallen brothers from Afghanistan, laying down a single medic's patch on each one. He whispered, "We made it count, boys. We really did." He knew he had done what he was meant to do, not just once, but twice. That night, he sat by his window, the same Kansas fields glowing under the moon. He took out Amir's photo, now creased and faded. He smiled. For the first time in years, the sound of war in his head began to fade. In the years that followed, Hayes's story spread quietly through military academies, hospitals, and humanitarian networks. Young medics studied his methods, his calm under fire, his refusal to abandon life, no matter whose it was. One inscription was painted on the wall of the Army Medic School in Fort Sam Houston, Texas. "To heal in hell, that is true courage." In memory of Corporal Daniel "Doc" Hayes. Because in 2023, he passed away, peacefully, in his sleep. He was 51 years old. No fanfare, no headlines, just silence and gratitude. At his funeral, soldiers, refugees, doctors, and children from 3 continents sent letters. One said, "He didn't just save lives, he showed us what humanity looks like." And from somewhere far away, a young man named Amir lit a candle, whispering a prayer for the man who once saved his father's life. Daniel Hayes never carried a gun, but he carried something far heavier, the weight of compassion in a world of violence. He taught us that heroism isn't always loud. It's sometimes a quiet heartbeat that refuses to stop, even when the world goes dark. He once said, "If you can choose between saving a life and taking one, always choose to save, because war will end someday, but the lives you save will keep the world alive." And maybe that's what made him different. He didn't win wars. He healed them. He was more than a medic. He was proof that kindness can survive, even in the heart of war.